Hello YouTube and welcome to my channel if you are new, and welcome back if you are already a subscriber. I'm not going to waste your time with a long intro. You've seen what the video is about from the title. I've got quite a lot to say about each of these, so just going to jump straight into it. So number one, Acid Pro has some great tools for sampling, the chopper, the Beatmapper, and its ability to read Midi files by just dragging and dropping them into Acid Pro. Just have a quick look then at these tools you have got: the chopper, the Beatmapper, and reading MIDI files. Reading MIDI files, if you just drag a MIDI file into Acid Pro, got a Doctor Who theme here. You can see there straight away it's got loads of lines it's created on the track list, and this is just now allowing me to just draw the track in, all the individual parts of this MIDI file, this track. I'm just drawing it all out now, and these are all the different instruments that are in this particular composition. So if you wanted to sample a MIDI file, you can just drop that MIDI file into Acid Pro and it's there ready to go. Other benefit with this is that it's also beat mapped as well, so if you change the tempo, this will change as well. Now, all of these individual parts of the MIDI track, to start with, default, it will just play standard orchestra sounds that comes with Acid Pro. You can change the individual parts of this. So if you just wanted to change this part of the track into a different instrument, you could just assign that to a different instrument. So its ability to just drag and drop MIDI files in and already be beat matched is fantastic. With the Beatmapper, you can just drag an audio file in. Would you like to use the Beatmapper on this? Okay, yes. Now it's asking me to select the first beat. So I can see the first beat starts here. Click next. And you can see that Acid Pro is now trying to find a loop. Hit next, and now it's pretty much, might need a slight tweak. There we go. So this is great as well, because if you do have a finished audio, maybe you want to do a mix of something, it's very quick to get that audio beat mapped so that it's in sync with the rest of your track. And you can also tweak this quite a bit as well. So let's say over here, if I go into my stretch tab, if it's not quite on the line look, I can move these and make sure I've got perfect loops on each one. If I double click here, I can put a little marker there, and yeah, that seems to be on the beat now. You can see it's pretty quick to get music into a loop by doing this using the Beatmapper, and you can use these lines here to make perfect loops to sample. The other tool you've got with Acid Pro is the chopper, and with the chopper you can select a position on the timeline. So let's say I want it to be here, and with the chopper you can zoom in as close as you want and just take a little piece of a sample. So maybe I just want this little bit here into the timeline. So here I'm just press this button and now I'm adding that sample into the project. So if I zoom in and press the button here, I'm just adding that little part in. Now let's say I want to add this part. You can see where it's putting it on the timeline. Click that button, insert, and there it is. So this is very useful if you just want to take a little piece out of an audio. Probably less likely to get in trouble with copyright if you're just using a tiny little piece of something. The disadvantages with Acid Pro: there's no way in Acid Pro, with the standard tools that come with it, to just drop one single sound into a MIDI keyboard, so you can just play the whole sound on the keyboard with different pitches like an instrument. What you can do, however, let's say I've got this part here and I want it to be a higher pitch. I can use the plus and minus. You can see that's going up there, plus 10, plus 13. It goes up to 24, or you can go down to -24 if you want to change the pitch. But you can imagine if you're trying to write music with this, so the notes are like do, 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 draw more notes in, copy and paste, have that one pitched up a little bit more, so first note starts low and then goes high, and you can see that's quite time consuming when you can just get tools for dropping a sound into a MIDI keyboard so that you can just play the sound. That's really where Acid Pro does need an improvement. I'm surprised there's not been anything to add to Acid Pro that allows you to do that. But moving on, so my second tool that you can use with Acid Pro is, now this is a bit controversial, and that is Fruity Loops. So yeah, a bit controversial saying this, but it is a good sampler, or was a good sampler. The benefits to this is that here, for example, once I've opened FL Studio as a VST instrument, so you can have FL Studio as a VST instrument, I could draw some notes in, like so, and I could have this sound as something else. I hate the windows on FL Studio, but one sec. Okay, so here we go. So this box here, so when I click on this, I've got this box here. So I could now open a sound and find a sound on my computer, which it will then put into a sampler. FL Studio is a sampler, so I could open a sound. Once I've got a sound here, if I click this button, if I right click and then go to send to piano roll, so now I have that one sound on a keyboard. So this is, you can do, so you've got your one sound on the keyboard. Now, as long as you've got the same tempo in FL Studio as you have with Acid Pro, so here look, FL Studio is set at 120 and Acid Pro is at 120. If I make a loop here, I've got my instrument here. You could then use this as a way of sampling. Now, the pros and cons to this is that, well, that is the pro. Before, there was lots of free VST plugins for allowing you to do sampling. This really was the only option if you were using Acid Pro and wanted to sample something in this way of having it on a piano roll. So you would do it here and then use it in Acid. But the cons to this is that it's a lot of money to spend just for having a sampler like this, especially when there's lots of free samplers now that can do this. And it's very fiddly as well. So that, the whole thing's just very fiddly to use, when you compare it to something like Acid Pro, where you can just get your MIDI. So let's say I'm working on this one and I can just draw it in on the timeline as it is. So little notes, big notes, and I'm just drawing it straight on the timeline. I've not got to go to different screens. It's just all in the same place. So that is a disadvantage to having FL Studio as a sampler, or just using it in general. And that brings me on to the next tool you can use with Acid Pro, and that is this XTT sampler. So I did use FL Studio as a sampler until there was plugins available, and that is the benefits to this XTT sampler. It's free and you can open any sound. So let's say I want to have this, aim and break, and then I will just be able to play that on the keyboard straight away. That sounds quite slow there, but if I play it higher on the keyboard, the sample is higher. So that's what I look for when I'm looking to sample. Just want one sound and be able to play it low notes and high notes. That's it for me, job done for sampling. It does have a couple of effects that come with this, speed and depth and LFO, although it's not really an advantage because you've got other plugins you can use to add effects. So it's a lot easier than using FL Studio, but it is quite long to find your files and open them all individually. You know, like if you're making a drum beat and you've got your kick drum, then you've got your snare, and then your hi-hats, you know, you're going through finding all of these files. It could be better if it was a drag and drop. So moving on, this is the TX16WX. This is a free sampler, and there is so much that this thing can do. Like I mean, I should probably do a whole video just on this. The benefit is you can load your keyboard with loads of samples. You can have them as single hits, or you can drag one sound over a keyboard with different pitches. So, for example, if I just put this here on one note, and I could just put it on this one note here, you could load this with lots of different sounds. Like you could have your kick drum on one key, your snare on another key, your hi-hats on another key, then you could put a horn on another key, and then you could have a bass noise that's dragged over loads of notes so that you can play low notes and high notes and just create your own sound bank sampler. This is probably the best tool out of all of these on the video for sampling. But the disadvantage is that it won't remember anything you do. So it requires lots of saving, because once you come out your project and go back in, it isn't going to remember anything you've done here unless you have saved it inside here and made a preset and saved it as my sample bank, or give it a name and load it each time you go into the project. So that is a disadvantage, because if you lose that file, you lose that preset, you've done all that work creating a sound bank, and then your track could be ruined because it hasn't got that information when it loads. You know, another disadvantage to this, and I have mentioned this in another video, is that let's say you do use this as a drum machine, and you've got a kick on one and a snare on another, and you drum away and make your drum beat. All of that information is going to be on one MIDI line. So you've got your tracks here. So when you record it and you're drumming away on your keyboard, you're playing your kicks, your hi-hats, your snares, your whatever other sounds you've got, all of that is going to be on one track. Now, when you are mastering a track and trying to get the best sound out of it, you would want to put like an effect on the kick and an effect on the snare, but the effects that you put on kicks and snares when you're trying to get the best sound is going to be completely different. So you're almost making life a lot more complicated later on down the line by doing it in that way. Like if you've just got a whole track with your kick, your drums, your snares, you're going to get to a point where you want to maybe put a side chain on the kick drum, but it's on the same track as your snare. So you're going to have to then separate all of that onto different tracks in order to put individual effects on each part of the drum beat. If you're just using this though as a sampler so that you've just got one sound over the whole keyboard, fine, you can do that, apart from don't forget to save, because otherwise you're going to lose all that information. So yes, this is a really good tool. It's really fun to just sort of put loads of sounds on here and just have a whole keyboard full of different sounds. But when you record that, it's all going to be on the same track. You definitely want different effects on your kick and your snare. You wouldn't have the same effect on the kicks and the snares as one track. Snares might have a little bit of reverb, whereas a kick drum might have a compressor on it, working as a side chain, but you wouldn't put the same effect on both, So yeah, in terms of what it can do and the tools that it's got on here, this is an absolute powerhouse when it comes to sampling. But I have got one more recommendation, and that is Sforzando, which is my personal favorite for sampling a single sound. So the way it works, you drag your sound into there. If it's the first time you've used the DAW on this particular computer, it is the first time I've opened it, you'll need to give it a place to save files. And that's it. It's now set up. I've given it a folder to save sounds. So I've put this break now into here, and that's it. I can now play it on the keyboard. And that's really what I like about this. It's just straight to the point. And as with everything else in Acid Pro, you can just drag and drop stuff in and then start editing it. So for me, there's not really any cons with this. It's just straight to the point. You just drag your sound in and that's it. Ready to go. So yeah, if you just want to drop a single sound in and play that on the keyboard, this is the best tool I think for that. You do get some effects with it as well, bit of reverb, equalizer. But again, I tend to use a plugin for that. Like I've got a tool for reverb that has a lot more options than this, so I don't really use the tools with it, but it's nice that it's got it on there. It's just not really something that I would use. So that's it. That's my recommendations of samplers that you can use with Acid Pro. Thanks for watching. See you on the next video.